All right, guys, welcome in to my official Bracketology 2024 4.0 update. I think what I'm going to do is give an update every Friday because normally the Friday night games are not very good, and hopefully a lot of people will be able to see this without any games actually taking place. But I'm guessing every Friday going into March, and then March maybe two times a week when it comes to the bracketology. But either way, taking a look at the first thing we always look at, it is the bracket matrix. You can see there are four confirmed legit number one seeds, fully consensus. It's Purdue, UConn, and Houston. And how about Arizona surpassing North Carolina? North Carolina, in terms of metrics, they were never a one seed, but now they've lost several games in a weaker ACC, and they're bumped down to the two line. So those are the top four one seeds. You do have Marquette possibly thinking about being a one seed. They're on the two line. Tennessee, North Carolina, all of those teams are consensus two seeds. And then Kansas kind of trending to the two line right now, but kind of a hybrid in between a two and a three seed. Iowa State, how crazy would it be if Iowa State somehow became a one seed? I'm rooting for that to happen, honestly. But yeah, Iowa State really good at home, not great on the road. I would not pick them to go deep into the tournament based off of a profile like that. You've got Baylor, a very solid team, sitting on the three line, Alabama and Auburn. Remember, Auburn crushed Alabama just a few weeks ago. Right now, both of those teams on the three line. Duke sitting at the top of the four line. I like what I'm seeing from Duke in terms of their overall roster, the way it's built. If they're a 4 or 3 seed, I could see them going to the Elite Eight, possibly. Wisconsin really falling off. That's the exact thing that I expected to happen with Wisconsin. Remember, they lost 4 straight games. They did come back to beat Ohio State, but that's an Ohio State team that had pretty much given up. Illinois and Creighton also sitting on the 4 line. The Illini, they've had a very solid season. Creighton kind of been up and down. People thought they possibly could have been a 1 seed, but right now they're clinging. You want to be on that 4 line. You do not want a 5v12 matchup, although I do think the 5v12 upsets have been kind of overrated the past few years. Looking at that 5 line, South Carolina, I can tell you right now, I would probably pick a 12 seed to upset South Carolina. Their metrics are just so terrible. They just lost a game by 40 points. You've got Dayton on the 5 line. You've got San Diego State and BYU. San Diego State is another team I think will lose early. I realize San Diego State had a crazy run to the national title last year. I am not seeing it this year. I would pick both South Carolina and San Diego State. I'd have to see who they match up against a 12 seed, but both of those teams trending to losing. I'd have Dayton and BYU both winning. You do have Clemson, Oklahoma, another team I'm not high on. I'm really not high on Clemson either, but I could see them winning in the first round. Utah State, and then also Texas Tech, who I could see at least making the Sweet 16, moving on to the 7 seeds. You've got Colorado State, Kentucky, and their terrible defense. It's very hard to pick Kentucky to go deep into the tournament. You do have Florida Atlantic and St. Mary's, who has been crushing everyone. St. Mary's beat Gonzaga, and their last 3 games after that, they have been winning by like 30 points. St. Mary's, it's always uneven. They always kind of have a mediocre offense. So in terms of tournament plays, if a team hits a lot of threes, they can really struggle. We will see. Michigan State, the hard-charging Spartans, they're probably going to end up a 6 seed, I'm guessing, but we'll see. They're very streaky. If they are an 8 seed, there are a lot of people that will be predicting them to upset a 1 seed in the second round. You do have Texas, TCU, and Virginia. Virginia is a very annoying team to play because of just their style and how slow they are. Texas has high upside. I think TCU is probably a one and done. You do have Florida as a 9 seed. Florida's really come on strong as of late. They were on the outside looking in a few weeks ago. Now they're a solid 9 seed trending towards the 8 line. You can see basically a hybrid 8-9 seed with where they're ranked right now. You do have Northwestern, A&M, Texas A&M. They were a preseason top 25 team. They fell completely off. Now they're back in it. And how about the year Washington State has had out of the Pac-12? The Pac-12's final year. Washington State going to be homeless in terms of their conference next year. What a job they've done. On the 10 line, here's all the Mountain West teams that cannibalized themselves. New Mexico, Boise State, and then Indiana State suffering the tough loss. A lot of us like Indiana State. Imagine if Indiana State would have won out and finished like 28-3. They probably would have been like a 5 seed or a 6 seed. And then Butler sitting on that 10 line, barely in. You do have teams possibly in the play in, being Utah, who's really good at home, not great on the road. Mississippi State, Nebraska having a breakout year. Ole Miss really trending down, not surprising. And then Nevada. And then the 12 seeds, these are the teams in the 12v5 game. Gonzaga, not a fun team to face if you're a 5 seed. Providence, I would be fine if I was facing Providence. Grand Canyon, kind of annoying with Grand Canyon. You know, what is their record right now? 23-3. They are in a bad conference, but certainly they win a lot. McNeese is another one with Will Wade. And then Appalachian State, they have some decent analytics. Moving on to the 13 seeds, Sanford is another team that's really run up the win total. They're like 22-3 right now. Yale out of the Ivy. The Ivy is decent this year. Wouldn't surprise me if Cornell won that auto bid. UC Irvine out of the Big West. And then Akron out of the MAC conference, the 13 seeds. The 14 seeds, North Carolina, Wilmington from the coastal, Louisiana Tech. You do have Vermont and Morehead State. I'm used to Morehead State being a 16 seed or a 15 seed here. They move up. You do have High Point as a 15 seed, Eastern Washington. Colgate, who's been crushing everyone out of the Patriot. It would not surprise me at all if Colgate moved up to the 14 line. And then the Polster, Quinnipiac, and then the 16 seeds, Green Bay. What a story that is. I don't think Green Bay is going to win the Horizon. I'm guessing it's going to be Youngstown State or Oakland. But Green Bay, one of the worst teams in all of college basketball last year, coming back possibly as a 16 seed, South Dakota State, Southern, Eastern Kentucky, Norfolk State, and then Merrimack as well. And then other potential teams on the bubble right now. The number one team, it is Cincinnati on the outside looking in. Seton Hall, Wake Forest is a team that has good analytics. St. John's, unfortunately, has lost too much recently. You do have Colorado, Memphis, another team that's fallen off, and Villanova. And then some other teams that people think are going to win their conferences. Richmond, Drake, Charlotte, James Madison. You can see Princeton and Cornell. A lot of split between the Ivy right now. Also South Florida. But let's get to the actual analytic rankings. You can see your typical number one and number two, it is Houston, it's Purdue. UConn has run up a crazy win total, just 2 losses out of the Big East. Auburn at number 4, that's another one in terms of analytics I just can't get behind. I don't think Auburn is that good. Iowa State at number 5, that's another one I can't get behind. Arizona at number 6, certainly Arizona, if they're a 1 seed, I think they're an auto lock to at least the Sweet 16. Same thing with Purdue. Same thing with Houston. We're going to have 3 auto locks to the Sweet 16 just based off of what happened last year. I think these teams are going to come back and play a lot better with both Arizona and Purdue losing in round 1 in crazy upsets. Alabama, kind of a streaky team. I could see them losing early. You do have Tennessee, very solid team. BYU as a top 10 team analytically. And then Marquette with the Illini at number 11. St. Mary's, not surprising. The analytics love it when you crush teams, and St. Mary's is doing that. Even St. Mary's in front of Kansas. I don't know if I can trust St. Mary's to really make a deep run, like an Elite 8 run I'm talking. Maybe a Sweet 16 run, depending. But then you can have Kansas, North Carolina all the way down at 14, and then MSU with 9 losses sitting at number 15. Moving down, Baylor, very solid team at number 16, really solid program. Duke at number 17, Florida all the way up to 18, even in front of Creighton. Gonzaga at number 20. You do still have Wisconsin at 21, Texas, New Mexico, Texas Tech inside of the top 25. Kentucky, you can see the defensive rank outside of the top 100 in terms of efficiency. They're at 116. San Diego State at 26. Mississippi State, Dayton, 20-4 on the year out of the A10. St. John's at 14-11, still inside the top 30. And then Wake Forest is a team that I'm watching. If you're Wake Forest, you would really like to win one of the next 2 games. They do have a brutal schedule. They did recently lose to Duke on the road. And then taking a look at, this is kind of like a better thing to look at in terms of the context on where these teams are. So you can see the seed is on the left and then their actual analytic rank. So, I mean, the top 4 1 seeds are all ranked within the top 5. The 2 seeds, you can see maybe Baylor, a little bit of a fraud, at least analytically. They have Baylor as a 2 seed. Wow. Looking at the 3 line, Kansas, North Carolina. Kansas, in terms of analytics, isn't loved. Dayton possibly as a 3 seed. The 4 line, you do have Duke, Bama, Wisconsin at number 26 in terms of analytics, and San Diego State is a 4 seed here. Looking at the 5 line, BYU, Illinois, Clemson, and Texas Tech. If I were to predict an upset there, I'd probably have Clemson losing out of those teams. I really like BYU, Illinois, and Tech right now. Looking at the 6th line, South Carolina, MSU. So MSU's up to a 6 seed in this. Doesn't surprise me. Their analytics are really good. Creighton and Colorado State on the 6th line. Oklahoma, Washington State, Utah State. TCU on the 7 line. Florida, St. Mary's, Texas, and Kentucky rounding out the 8 line. Nevada, Northwestern, Boise State, and Butler. So Butler solidly in this tournament, possibly. You can see the analytical rank next to Indiana State as a 10 seed, Mississippi State, New Mexico, A&M, and then you do have the 11 seeds, Virginia, Gonzaga making the tournament. I don't think is a play-in. I don't know, it's hard to tell, but there's Grand Canyon also possibly as an 11 seed. So Grand Canyon might be able to draw a 6 seed in the first round, possibly South Carolina. That's the team, or maybe Colorado State, one of those two teams. If Grand Canyon gets a team like Michigan State or Creighton, I think it's going to be very tough. Looking at the 12 seeds, you can see Florida Atlantic. We know their Final Four run last year. James Madison, another team that a lot of people liked early on in the season. And then McNeese. Looking at the 13 seeds, it is Samford, Princeton. So yeah, I'm guessing Samford is pretty much locked into being a 13 seed. Same thing with UC Irvine. Same thing with whoever wins the Ivy. And then you do have UNC Wilmington, the 14 seeds, Akron. Akron's kind of trending in between the 13 and 14 line right now. Louisiana Tech, Morehead State, Vermont, and then they do have High Point, Quinnipiac, Colgate, and Weber State as 15 seeds, and then Youngstown State out of the Horizon. I'd probably pick Youngstown State to win the Horizon right now. And then there you can see the final teams in the tournament. Nebraska, Providence, Ole Miss, Utah, Lipscomb as a play-in 16 seed, Norfolk as a play-in, North Dakota also as a play-in, and Merrimack as well. And then the teams just out. Right now, the number 1 team just out, it is Cincinnati. Villanova ranked number 20th in terms of analytics. They're on the outside looking in. Seton Hall, Colorado, St. John's. There's Wake Forest, Pittsburgh, along with Drake. Probably going to need to win their conference tournament in the Missouri Valley. Moving on to the actual updated bracket, looking at the Midwest, the Detroit region, you can see Purdue, the number 1 overall seed, possibly taking on Florida or Washington State. I think definitely good matchups for Purdue there to go to the Sweet 16. San Diego State taking on McNeese. I would for sure pick McNeese to win that game, although I haven't had great luck with the 12/5 upsets. Dayton and Akron, a little in-state battle. That could be interesting, maybe a little upset potential there. Florida Atlantic taking on, well, that's a play-in game, Iowa State and Eastern Washington. I like Iowa State to win that game. You do have Utah State, Butler, and then Tennessee taking on Troy. That's a very nice bottom region for Tennessee. You look at that, your 3 seed is Iowa State. They don't play great away from home. You know, your 6 seed is FAU. They've been very streaky this year. I would love a potential advancement to at least the Sweet 16, possibly the Elite 8 for Tennessee in that scenario. Moving on to the East, you do have UConn, the defending national champions, is the number 1 overall seed, possibly taking on Michigan State. That's not fun. Michigan State, Virginia, what a first-round matchup, but yeah, that would be tough if you're UConn. South Carolina versus Yale in a 5v12 game. I'm watching South Carolina because their analytics are so bad in a potential upset game against Yale. That's another 12v5. Baylor, South Florida in a 4v13. South Florida's gotten a lot of hype recently. You do have Oklahoma and Indiana State. For sure, I'd pick Indiana State to win that game. I have not liked Oklahoma all year. Auburn and Vermont. You would expect Auburn, based on some recent success in the tournament, to be able to handle Vermont. And then looking North Carolina, possibly taking on Colgate. Also Texas Tech. That is not a fun second-round matchup, possibly, for North Carolina. I might have them losing to Texas Tech in the second round. Their analytics are not great. That would be a tough one. Moving on to the West, you could see Arizona listed as the number 1 seed in this region, possibly taking on Mississippi State or Texas. I think that's fine if you're Arizona. You'd want to face one of those teams. BYU and Samford, so Samford listed as a 12 seed. I think BYU is really good, though. Wisconsin, UC Irvine. I might think about taking UC Irvine in that game, but I believe I'd have BYU advancing to the Sweet 16. And then looking, you do have Alabama listed as a 3 seed, taking on Morehead State. I want to say Alabama already faced Morehead State this season. Maybe it was last year during non-conference play. And then Kansas possibly taking on Green Bay as a 15 seed. That's great to see Green Bay climbing up. But I don't think they're going to win the Horizon. They could possibly take on, or excuse me, Kansas would probably face either Colorado State or Nebraska. I think Kansas is smooth sailing to the Sweet 16 if they get one of those teams. Moving on to the South, you do have Houston as the number 1 seed. Not a big fan if I'm Houston of possibly facing St. Mary's in the second round. I would want to avoid them. I would much rather want to face either Texas or Mississippi State. You do have Creighton listed as a 5 seed. I would have Creighton winning that game against Richmond. If Richmond does end up making the tournament, Illinois versus UNC Wilmington, Illini should be fine to win that game. Kentucky and Grand Canyon, that's a fun matchup. We would expect a higher scoring game there with Kentucky. A lot of people would be picking Grand Canyon based off of the sediment. How about High Point up to a 14 seed? High Point. Imagine if High Point gets up to like a 12 seed. That's not going to happen. But they'd be facing Duke. And then you do have Marquette taking on Quinnipiac, the 15 seed. I think Marquette possibly facing A&M or TCU. That is an easy advancement for them to the Sweet 16. But guys, that is going to do it for my official college basketball bracketology update here for 2024. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.